Rain slid down the front windows of Lighthouse Coffee and Books, turning Cedar Harbor into soft streaks of gray. Inside, the air was warm and thick with steam, smelling of espresso and cinnamon. Harper Quinn wiped a ring of coffee from the counter and lined up paper cups in a neat row. It was almost 8. The regulars would start to appear. The bell over the door chimed clear above the murmur of voices. She looked up. Ethan Cole stepped in from the rain. He pushed his hood back and shook water from his hair. Drops clung to his dark jacket. For a moment, he stood just inside the door. Then he moved to the short-lined hands in his pockets. Harper bent over a tray of muffins, pretending to adjust the labels while she watched him in the glass. The reflection in the front window caught her at a strange angle and widened her shape, blurring her into the rows of books behind her. The line shuffled forward. Ethan reached the counter. He always gave his name, even though she had known it for a long time. "Morning," he said. His voice was low and a little rough. "Morning," she answered. Large black no room. The corner of his mouth lifted. Yeah, she already had the cup ready. Her marker hovered over the lid. She did not need to write it, but she printed his name anyway. Ethan. On impulse, she added a tiny lighthouse beside the letters, its beam a thin line of ink. She slid the cup across. His fingers touched the cardboard, a breath before hers let go. "Busy day?" she asked. He glanced at the rain outside. They all sort of looked the same. Not self-pity, not a joke, just tired. "You want a lid?" she said. He hesitated, then shook his head. "Tastes better without it." "I thought so." He turned away with the cup in his hand. The bell chimed and a gust of cold air slid across the floor as he stepped outside. Then the door closed and he was gone into the pale morning. Harper exhaled and reached for the next order. The rest of the morning moved in a familiar rhythm. Cappuccino extra foam, 2 mochas with oat milk, a caramel latte for a woman who never looked up from her screen. Someone dropped a handful of coins, and Harper crouched to pick them up, feeling the apron pull tight across her hips. There was always that quick sting when she bent or reached that sudden awareness of space, of how much of it she took. She emptied the coins into the tip jar and pushed her thoughts towards safer ground. The stack of used paperbacks waiting to be shelved, the handwritten book club sign she still needed to finish, the to-do list Mrs. Lopez had taped under the register. Outside, the rain eased to a mist. When the line finally thinned, Harper locked the door for her short break and flipped the sign to "Be right back." The back room felt like a different world. No music, no murmur of customers, just the buzz of a fluorescent light and the drip of water somewhere in the pipes. She dropped into the chair by the staff computer and stretched her toes inside her sneakers. Her email loaded in a bright list. Store receipts, a coupon, a newsletter from a bookstore in Portland, then a subject line that made her stomach tighten. Cedar Harbor High School, class of 2013 reunion. She clicked before she could talk herself out of it. The school logo filled the top of the message blue and gold, the seabird mascot frozen with its wings spread. For a second, she smelled the gym floor wax and sweat and too much body spray. Her chest went tight. The email was cheerful and chatty, all about reconnecting and seeing how far you have come. There was a class photo from senior year. Rows of teenagers in navy gowns crowded the screen. In the back row, she saw herself half hidden behind a taller girl, chin tucked low, as if she could fold into the blue fabric. No one had asked her to move to the front. A laugh rang in her memory, sharp and bright. Locker doors slammed in her mind. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead again. She was 17, hugging a binder to her chest, staring at the paper taped to her locker. Whale purr. Black marker bled through the copy paper. The word curled in thick bubble letters. Someone had drawn waves under it, and a tail. A knot of kids had gathered in front of it. "Careful, she might splash you," a boy had said, and the laughter had rolled down the hall. Alone in the back room, Harper felt heat climb her neck. Her hands closed into fists on her thighs. The ding of the front door sensor snapped her back. Someone had stepped into the quiet shop and met a locked door. She closed the email, but the words "see how far you have come" stayed with her faint, as writing on glass after breath. Harper slid her shoes back on and walked out front. She flipped the sign to open and smiled at the waiting customer through the glass. Somewhere under the noise of the cafe, the hallway of Cedar Harbor High still echoed. The day crawled and vanished at the same time. By closing the outdoor lights along the street, had flicked on halos in the thinning rain. The last customer left with a paper bag of pastries, and Harper wiped crumbs from the counter until the laminate gleamed. Mrs. Lopez was in the corner by the shelves, restocking tea tins and humming a song from the radio. Harper pulled the till, counted the cash filled in numbers on a sheet that had already been stained with coffee rings. Her hands moved from habit. Her mind kept sliding back to the email. Cedar Harbor High. Reunion. Harper pressed the drawer shut and set the till aside. Mrs. Lopez straightened dust on her apron. "You look like you swallowed a lemon," she said. "Bad tips." "Tips are fine," Harper said. "Rent is less fine, but that is not new." Mrs. Lopez smiled, then tilted her head. "Something else, then. I know that face. I have a son. Same eyes." Harper hesitated. The hallway was empty. The bell over the door was quiet. Rain pattered lightly against the windows. "They are doing a reunion," she said. 10 years. Mrs. Lopez lifted both brows. "Ah, the famous American torture." "It is optional," Harper said, "so technically not torture." "You clicked the email, though." Harper looked down at the register tape. "I should not have." Mrs. Lopez walked over, leaned with both hands on the counter. She was small and round, with salt and pepper hair pulled into a messy knot. Her eyes were sharp. "Did you hate high school that much?" she asked. Harper breathed out through her nose. "I did not love it." She saw the locker door again, the torn note the way the whole hallway seemed to tilt around the laughter. She heard someone call her name in a warped sing-song that did not sound like her name at all. "People were not very kind," she said. It was lighter than the truth, but she offered it. Mrs. Lopez looked at her for a long moment. Then she tapped the counter once. "People are idiots, mija. You know that already." She shrugged. "Maybe you go, maybe you do not. Just make sure you are the one deciding, not a bunch of ghosts in a hallway." Harper tried to smile. It came out thin. "That is very poetic for a woman who just spent 20 minutes fighting with a box of chai." "I won, did I not?" Mrs. Lopez grinned. "Now go home. I will finish the last shelf." Harper hung up her apron and grabbed her jacket and bag. At the door, she looked back at the warm interior of the shop. The lamps above the bar cast soft circles on the ceiling. The books on the far wall glowed in the light. Lighthouse, she thought, and then shook her head at herself. It was just a building, just a job. Outside, the air was cold enough to bite. She zipped her jacket and shoved her hands into her pockets as she walked the 6 blocks to her apartment. The pavement shone darkly. Water beaded on the hood of a parked truck and slid off in thin streams catching streetlight. By the time she reached her building, her hair was damp along her neck. The stairwell smelled like old paint and somebody's dinner. Her apartment was on the second-floor door, sticking slightly in the frame, until she put a shoulder into it. Inside, it was quiet except for the old fridge humming. She flicked on the lamp by the couch and dropped her keys in a chipped ceramic bowl. A stack of library books leaned against the armrest, titles about baking and astronomy, and one mystery she had already read twice. She opened her laptop on the coffee table and sank to the floor back against the couch. The screen glowed, reflecting in the glass of the framed print above the television. Her own face looked back at her in the black border, shadowed and slightly distorted. Her inbox waited with its neat list of subject lines. She scrolled until she saw the school logo again and clicked. The reunion email opened. Time, date, hotel. There was a link to a form where she could fill in what she had been doing for the past 10 years. She stared at the empty text box. What was she supposed to write? Harper Quinn, former whale joke, current barista, lives alone, owns too many paperbacks and exactly 2 plants, both of them dying. She erased the few words she had typed. Her finger hovered over the delete button for the whole email. Delete it and it would be gone. No reminder, no pressure, no distance between the person she had been and the one she was now measured in other people's eyes. She heard Mrs. Lopez again. "Make sure you are the one deciding." The truth settled in her chest, heavy and stubborn. She did not want to go to show off. She did not want to see Madison Blake's face again, or hear that soft, poisonous laugh. She wanted to know that she could walk back into that building, or any room with those people, and breathe, even if her heart pounded, even if her hands shook. She wanted to know that the girl who hid behind rows of lockers had not won. Harper closed the email without deleting it. She pushed herself up, went to the bathroom, and flicked on the harsh light over the mirror. The room was small, the tile cracked in one corner. The mirror had a faint line across the bottom edge like an old scar. She looked at her reflection, curly hair pulled into a loose knot, round face, shoulders that filled the frame, the soft line of her stomach under her shirt. She had learned to count herself in parts. Good hair, nice eyes, too much of everything else. She turned sideways, watching the fabric pull, and felt something sour in her throat. "Enough," she whispered. Her voice sounded odd in the tiled room. She turned off the light and went to the bedroom. Her closet doors were slightly crooked. Inside, hangers clinked as she pulled clothing aside. Work shirts, old concert t-shirts, jeans that were a little loose at the waist, snug at the thighs. At the back of the rod hung a dress she had only worn once, dark green, the color of the harbor when the sky was clear. She had bought it for a wedding 3 years ago, then talked herself out of going. She pulled it out now. The fabric slid over her hands smoother than she remembered. She laid it across the bed and stood there staring down at it. For a second she saw it under the hotel chandeliers in the picture on the email. The Crescent Bay Hotel where the reunion would take place. That ballroom, with its faded carpet and attempt at glamour. She pictured herself walking in alone, hearing someone whistle, hearing someone else throw a comment half under their breath. She pictured the way her lungs might close. Her stomach flipped hard. She put the dress back on its hanger before she could feel the fabric catch under her fingers. Maybe she could text someone from school, an ally. She tried to think of one. Most of the kind faces in her memory blurred at the edges. The sharp ones remained. Her gaze slid to her phone on the nightstand. A few contacts, co-workers, vendors. The number saved under dentist, no close friends. She had not collected many of those. A thought slipped in quietly. You do not have to go alone. It sounded simple in her head. Obvious. People brought spouses to these things. Partners, dates. Her first response arrived just as quickly. Who, exactly? Who would stand in that room next to her and not make her feel like a charity case? Who would not look around and secretly agree with the jokes? She sat on the edge of the bed and rubbed her palms over her jeans. The room felt smaller. At the front of her mind, like a photograph, came the image of a man leaning on her counter that morning, rain on his jacket fingers cradling a white paper cup. Ethan Cole with his quiet eyes and the air of someone who knew what it felt like to be small in all the wrong ways. She tried to wave the idea away. He was a customer. She knew nothing about his life beyond the fact that he drank his coffee black and carried a sadness that sat between his shoulder blades every time he walked out the door. As much as she pushed it away, the thought settled in. He had never once looked at her like she was a punchline. Harper lay back on the bed staring at the ceiling. The overhead light cast a pale circle that did not quite reach the corners of the room. Outside, a car door slammed. Somewhere a dog barked. Her pulse ticked in her throat. Tomorrow she would have to wake up and make coffee and smile at strangers like always. The idea sat beside all the other familiar tasks. She reached for her phone, opened her alarm, and set it for half an hour earlier than usual. When she turned off the bedside lamp, the room fell into darkness except for the thin glow from the streetlight outside, leaking around the edges of the curtains. The thought of the reunion and the line of Ethan's profile in the morning light followed her as she waited for sleep. The alarm pulled her up too early. Harper rolled onto her side and fumbled for her phone. The sky outside the curtains was a flat gray, the faintest outline of morning behind it. Her body wanted to sink back into the mattress, into the space where nothing had to be decided. She lay there for a few seconds with the alarm in her hand, listening to the hum of the building to the beats and the distant rumble of a truck on the street. Then she swung her feet down onto the cold floor. In the bathroom, the mirror showed the same face as the night before, but her eyes were puffier. She splashed her cheeks with water and brushed her hair into something that looked intentional. Mascara, a touch of color at her mouth. Nothing dramatic, just not the autopilot version of herself. In the kitchen, she made coffee from the cheap grounds she kept in a glass jar. It tasted thin. She drank it anyway, leaning against the counter, thinking about nothing and everything. There was a chance Ethan would not come in today. People broke routines. Trucks broke down, kids got sick, jobs ran late. The thought hit her with an odd mix of panic and relief. She put on her jeans and the navy shirt with the coffee cup printed on the pocket. It fit a little snugger than it had last year. She tugged it down and grabbed her keys. Lighthouse Coffee and Books was still dark when she arrived. The sky had lightened to a softer gray, the kind that made the streetlights look out of place. She unlocked the door, the metal cool against her fingers, and stepped into the familiar silence of the shop. She flicked on the lights. Warm circles spread across the ceiling and over the tables. The front windows reflected the interior back at her, catching her figure again in that wide glass. For a second, she saw two Harpers front and back, like the world had folded. She moved behind the counter, grinder on, beans in, milk jugs out of the fridge. Her hands worked the steps of opening, as if her body knew a dance her mind did not have to choreograph. On a stack of unused cups, she drew small lighthouses with quick strokes of her marker, just the outline and a beam. She did not know why, only that her fingers wanted to move to leave some mark behind. At 8, Mrs. Lopez arrived, shrugging off a raincoat dotted with water. "You are here early," she said. "Trying to impress me." "Always," Harper said. Mrs. Lopez gave her a quick hug that smelled like outside air and laundry detergent, then disappeared into the back with her bag. By 8:15, customers had begun to trickle in. A nurse with her hair tucked into a bun, a man in a reflective vest, a pair of students with headphones. Harper smiled, took orders, called out names. Steam rose around her, fogging the metal of the espresso machine. Every time the bell over the door chimed, her pulse jumped. 9 came and went. She told herself he did not have to be here at exactly the same time every day. People had lives. They adjusted, they shifted. At 9:12, the bell rang again. She looked up. Ethan stepped inside, shaking a few drops from the brim of his cap before tugging it off. His jacket was darker at the shoulders where the rain had soaked in. He ran a hand through his hair, flattening it back, and joined the short line. Her chest tightened. It would be so easy not to say anything. To hand him his coffee, make some neutral comment about the weather, and watch him walk back out into his morning. "Large, black, no room," she murmured under her breath, reaching for a cup. Her hand shook. When he reached the counter, she had already filled it halfway. "Morning," he said. "Morning," she replied. She started the pour and then cut it off, setting the pot back with more force than she intended. The coffee sloshed. He noticed the small lighthouse she drew near his name, but did not comment. His fingers curled around the cup. "You all right?" he asked. There were 3 people behind him. A woman with a stroller, an older man counting change in his palm, a teenager staring at his phone. Harper felt their presence like weight at her back. "Yeah," she said. Her voice was higher than usual. She swallowed. "Busy day?" He studied her for a beat, as if he wanted to ask more, then stepped aside. "Thanks." The line moved. Orders came and went. Harper's Chance walked toward the door with a white paper cup and his cap in his other hand. She handed a latte to the woman with the stroller, smiled until her cheeks hurt, then thrust her apron into Mrs. Lopez's hands. "I need a minute," she said. "Cover for me." Mrs. Lopez blinked. "What happened?" Harper did not answer. She was already heading for the end of the counter, then around it, her sneakers squeaking once on the damp floor. The bell chimed as the door swung closed behind Ethan. She caught it with her shoulder before it latched. Cold air rushed at her as she stepped outside. "Ethan," she called. He was halfway to his truck, footsteps slow and heavy, the way tired people walk. At the sound of his name, he turned. Harper jogged the few steps toward him, breath-catching. The morning felt sharper out here. The air smelled like wet pavement and salt from the harbor. A gull cried somewhere overhead. She stopped in front of him, too close, and had to take a half step back. "Sorry," she said, pushing hair from her face. "I am sorry. I did not mean to just shout at you." His brows knit. "You all right?" She laughed, short and nervous. "Fine, yes, no, I mean physically yes. Socially, this is a disaster." He waited. The truck behind him was blue with mud splashed along the lower panels. There was a booster seat visible through the rear window. Harper focused on that for a second, grounding herself. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "It is going to sound strange." He shifted his coffee to his other hand. "Stranger than most things I hear at 6 in the morning." "It is 9:20, she said. He gave a faint hint of a smile. "Then I am ready." She inhaled. The words tangled in her mouth. "There is a reunion," she said. "High school, mine, Cedar Harbor High. They are doing it at Crescent Bay Hotel, and I have not gone to any of the others, and I was going to delete the email, and then I did not. And now it is this Saturday, and I keep thinking about it, and my heart does this thing like it is trying to sprint out of my chest." She stopped to breathe. His face had not changed much, but she saw his eyes soften. "What I am trying to say," she went on, "is that I want to go, for me, not for them. I want to walk in there and not feel like I am going to disappear. But I also know myself, and if I walk in alone and I hear one word, one laugh that sounds wrong, I will shut down and it will be a waste." He was very still. "So," she said, and now her hands were shaking, so she shoved them into her pockets. "I thought maybe I do not know. Maybe if I had someone with me, someone who is kind, someone who does not look at me like I am a joke, someone like you." Her cheeks burned. She felt the heat all the way to her ears. "I am not asking for anything weird," she rushed on. "Just one night. You pretend to be my boyfriend. You stand next to me and drink bad wine and glare at anyone who tries to be awful. I can pay you. I mean, not like hire you. That sounded terrible. Just gas money time, whatever." The words flooded out and left her standing there, emptied out, watching him. For a moment, Ethan did not move. He heard the drizzle ticking on the cap in his hand, felt the damp seep through the sole of his boot. The street faded. The cafe, the truck, the birds, everything drew back until all he could see was a woman standing in front of him, trying not to fall apart on the sidewalk. High school. It dragged him back without his consent. He was 12 again, thinner and shorter, in a shirt that had once been his cousin's. The hem was frayed, the sleeves too long. The hallways of Cedar Harbor Middle had smelled like gum and disinfectant. His locker had stuck every time he tried to open it. He saw the boys before they reached him, but nowhere to go. "Nice shoes, Cole," one of them had said, looking at his battered sneakers. "What thrift store had a clearance sale?" Hands had grabbed his backpack, yanked him sideways into the lockers. The metal slammed his shoulder. Laughter. Someone knocked the lunch bag from his hand. It hit the floor with a dull smack, the sandwich inside flattening. Mayonnaise oozed through the paper. "Careful," another boy had said. Trash might stain the floor." They had walked away, leaving him alone with his heart pounding and his lunch spread out at his feet. In the present, his grip tightened on the coffee cup. He had worked very hard not to think about that boy anymore. He had traded thin for solid cheap shirts, for work boots and flannel. He had a business now, clients who shook his hand, a daughter who thought he could fix anything if he had enough tools and time. But pieces of that hallway still clung to him. He looked at Harper. She stood with her shoulders pulled up like she was braced for impact. Her eyes were bright, not angry, not bitter, just tired. Her voice when she spoke had that edge. He recognized, the one that came from knowing exactly how cruel kids could be. He could say no. It would be simple. He could tell her he did not do social things, that he had a daughter and a schedule and a list of excuses long enough to wrap around the block. He opened his mouth. What came out was something else. "You do not have to pay me," he said. His voice sounded strange to his own ears, quieter maybe. Harper blinked. "I do not..." He shook his head, and for the first time since she had stepped out here, his mouth curved in a more complete smile. "What time should I pick you up?" he asked. For a second she just stared at him. The air between them seemed to shift. A sound escaped her, halfway between a laugh and a breath. You mean it," she said. "You are not just being polite and then planning to cancel over text like an hour before." "I am bad at texting," he said. "If I wanted to say no, I would say it." Something in her posture loosened. Her shoulders dropped a fraction. She let out a breath she had been holding for years, not just for this moment. "Saturday," she said. 7. The hotel starts at 7:30, but I panic about parking." He nodded. 7, where do I pick you up?" She told him the name of her street, the color of her building, which entrance stuck in the rain. He took out his phone and entered the address with careful thumbs. "Can I have your number?" he asked, then amended, "so I do not show up at the wrong apartment and terrify a stranger." She gave it, her voice steadier now. He typed it in, then lifted his eyes again. Up close he could see faint freckles across the bridge of her nose. "I will be there," he said. Harper nodded too quickly. "Okay, yes, great, thank you, really. I have no idea why you agreed, but thank you." He did not say that he had an idea, that there were parts of her story sitting very close to parts of his. He just lifted the cup slightly, a small salute, then turned toward his truck. She stood on the sidewalk watching him go. When he opened the driver's side door, he glanced back once and saw her still there, arms wrapped around herself in the chill, a look on her face he could not quite name. Inside the cab, the familiar smell of sawdust and coffee wrapped around him. He set the cup in the holder and started the engine. His hands settled on the steering wheel, then tightened. Reunion. Saturday. A room full of strangers and old ghosts. He pulled out into the street, the wipers starting to beat a slow path across the windshield, and drove toward the day he had already planned, now altered by a single question on a wet sidewalk. The rest of the week slipped into place around the new promise, almost as if nothing had changed. Almost. Ethan still woke before dawn, the bedroom dim, the house quiet except for the heater kicking on. The digital clock on his nightstand glowed 5:17 in red. He lay there for a moment, listening to the soft puff of his daughter's breathing down the hall, then swung his legs to the floor. He dressed in the dark, moving by habit, work jeans, thermal shirt, wool socks. The picture frame on the dresser caught a faint slice of light from the hallway. Olivia smiled out from behind the glass, her head tipped against his on a summer afternoon. He looked at it just long enough to feel the old ache settle beside his ribs, then turned away. In the kitchen, he made coffee that was stronger than it needed to be and scrambled eggs in a pan that had lost half its non-stick coating. He ate standing at the counter, checking messages from clients and scrolling through a list of supplies he needed to order. A small figure padded into the doorway, dragging a blanket like a cape. "Morning bug," he said. Maisie rubbed sleep from her eyes. "You spilled on your shirt," she noted. He looked down at the dot of egg on his chest and smiled. "You are brutally honest for someone who cannot reach the top shelf." She climbed into a chair and folded her legs under her. "Is it a work day or a grandma day?" "Both," he said. You get grandma in the morning and cartoons in the afternoon if you are nice to her. I am always nice to her. He lifted a brow. She grinned, knowing that was not entirely correct. They moved through their usual routine: breakfast, toothbrush, shoes, the daily hunt for a missing backpack that was eventually discovered under a pile of colored pencils. When he buckled her into the booster seat in the back of the truck, she peered at him around the headrest. You look nervous, she said. Do I? Your forehead is doing the thing. He paused. Maybe I have a lot on my mind. My mind. She considered that. Do grown-ups get homework? Sort of, he said. We get taxes and phone calls. That sounds worse. It is. He drove her to his mother-in-law's bungalow 5 streets over. Helen was already on the porch in a cardigan, hands wrapped around a mug of tea, her white hair twisted into a low knot. Morning, she said as they walked up the path. She bent to kiss Maisie's head. There is oatmeal on the stove and the cartoons are already loud, so your day is made. Maisie darted inside. The sound of a cartoon theme song floated back through the open door. Helen straightened and looked at Ethan. Up close, she saw the tightness in his shoulders. You are doing the forehead thing, she said, echoing her granddaughter. Apparently it runs in the family. She sipped her tea. What is it? He hesitated. The words felt strange in his mouth. It had been a long time since he had said yes to anything that did not involve work or childcare. I agreed to help someone, he said. Helen's brows lifted slightly. Help how? You know the coffee place on Maple, he said. Lighthouse? The one with the good muffins. Yeah, the woman who works there, Harper. She asked me to go to her high school reunion with her. Helen stared at him for a moment. As in a date. As in a fake date, he said. Just for the night. She does not want to go alone. Helen watched his face. And you said yes. I did. He could see the flicker of surprise in her eyes, quickly replaced by something warmer. That is good, she said. You do not even know her. I know the way your voice changes when you talk about that shop, Helen said. And I know Maisie calls her the funny coffee lady, which is a high compliment. She is just a person who makes good coffee, he said, but it came out softer. Helen did not push. She just nodded once. You deserve a night where you are something other than Dad or Mr. Cole from the workshop. Try not to talk about lumber the whole time. I make no promises. As he drove away, he caught a glimpse of Maisie through the front window. She sat at the kitchen table with a bowl of oatmeal legs swinging, already talking to Helen with animated gestures. The sight steadied him. The days filled themselves. Measurements, sawdust, the buzz of the circular saw, deliveries stacked in the back of the workshop. In quiet moments, the thought of Saturday evening rose like a small wave. He pictured that ballroom he had only seen in passing chandeliers, high over polished floors, people grouping themselves into comfortable clusters. He pictured himself in the middle of it, in the kind of shirt he rarely wore, pretending he belonged there. When Saturday arrived, it came with a clear sky and air that had a bite to it. Cedar Harbor's streets shone with the leftover shine of recent rain. The harbor itself was calm, boats rocking slowly. Ethan spent the morning on the floor with Maisie, helping her build a lopsided fortress out of blocks. In the afternoon, he changed the oil in his truck. Each small job kept his hands busy while his mind paced. At 4:30, Helen announced that she had dinner covered and that he should go get handsome. I am as handsome as I am going to get. Says I am going to get, he said. You have at least one more level in you, she replied. In his bedroom, he opened the closet and stared at his limited options. Work shirts, flannel jeans. At the far end hung a navy button-down he had worn to Olivia's cousin's wedding years ago. The hanger had left a faint line in the fabric. He took it down, shook the dust from the shoulders, and held it up. It still fit when he pulled it on, though, snugger around the arms. He dug a pair of nicer dark jeans from the shelf and changed. Standing in front of the mirror, he tried to smooth the collar. His reflection looked less like himself, and more like a version he had not seen in a while. The same face, but with edges softened by time and grief, and the small, hopeful thing that had taken root since Tuesday. There was a knock on the bedroom door. Can I come in? Maisie called. Yeah. She bounced in socks, sliding a little on the wood floor, and stopped in the doorway. Whoa, she said. You look like when you took wedding pictures. He turned, the comment landing somewhere deep. Do I? Except your hair is different, she added. And you have more lines. Thank you for that, he said. Who are you going to see? She asked, walking in and poking at the buttons on his shirt. A friend, he answered. The woman from the coffee shop. Harper, she said, trying the name, making it sound like it belonged in their house. Is she nice? She is, he said. She gave me a cookie one time when you were talking to the lady at the counter, Maisie said. She called it a lighthouse cookie, even though it looked like a blob. I liked her. He remembered that day now. He had been paying for his drink distracted, and when he turned, Maisie was at one of the little tables swinging her feet and chewing on a sugar cookie with uneven frosting. Harper had leaned on the counter watching her with a soft look on her face. Maisie tugged at his sleeve. "Are you nervous?" she asked. "A little." "You can take my lucky sticker," she offered, running to her backpack. She returned with a small star sticker, edges worn. "I had it on my pencil box all year, and I only lost my crayons 3 times, so it is really strong." He accepted the sticker, throat tight. "I will put it in my wallet," he said. Helen appeared behind her. "Time to let your dad finish getting ready." Maisie stepped back, then surged forward and wrapped her arms around his waist. "Have fun," she said into his shirt. He smoothed a hand over her hair. "I will try." Cedar Harbor's late afternoon light was clear and thin when he backed the truck out of the driveway. The roads toward Harper's neighborhood led away from the water, up into streets lined with older buildings. He found her address, a faded brick structure with small balconies and a stairwell that faced the street. He parked at the curb and turned off the engine. For a moment he sat there listening to the ticking of the cooling motor. Then he climbed out and walked to the front. Harper's text had been Clear Buzzer 3B sticks, so give it a firm push. He did. The harsh buzz echoed faintly inside. A second later the door clicked and he pulled it open. The stairwell smelled like detergent and something tomato-based. He climbed to the second floor. Harper waited at the top hand on the banister. He had seen her every morning for nearly 2 years, in aprons and soft t-shirts, hair pulled back, cheeks flushed from steam and heat. This version stole his breath for a half second. She wore the dark green dress she had taken out and put away twice during the week. It skimmed her curves and stopped just below her knees. Her hair fell around her shoulders in loose waves. The lamps behind her turned the hallway light golden. She smoothed her palms down the fabric. "Too much?" she asked. "No," he said. The word came out too quickly. He corrected it with more care. "You look good." A faint color rose in her cheeks. "You too," she said. "I mean, not in a creepy way. Just you own a shirt with buttons. Impressive." He let out a quiet laugh. "I do on special occasions." She grabbed a small black bag from a hook by her door and turned to lock up. For a second he watched the way her hand shook as she slid the key into the lock. "Harper," he said. She glanced over her shoulder. "If you decide you do not want to stay once we get there," he said, "we leave. No explaining, no apologizing. We just go." She searched his face as if checking for any hint of judgment. "Thank you," she said. Her voice was soft but steady. They walked down the stairs together. Outside, the air had cooled again. He opened the passenger side door of the truck for her. She hesitated at the step up, then climbed in, careful of her dress. Inside the cab, the space felt smaller with the two of them. She adjusted the seatbelt, tugging it away from her chest. "Do you want music?" he asked. "Something that does not give me more anxiety than I already have." He turned the dial until a station with low-volume guitar filled the silence, then pulled away from the curb. They drove through town past familiar landmarks that looked slightly different from this angle. The grocery store, the park where he had taken Maisie on warm days, the edge of downtown where the buildings grew taller and the sidewalks more crowded. Ahead, the Crescent Bay Hotel rose above the waterfront, its once grand facade softened by years of salt and wind. The sign out front flickered. Warm light spilled from tall windows. In the passenger seat, Harper watched it grow closer, her fingers twisted in her lap, knotting and unknotting the strap of her bag. "Last chance to fake car trouble," she muttered. "I just changed the oil," he said. "It would not be convincing." She let out a small, breathy laugh. It faded as they turned into the lot. He found a spot near the side entrance. When he cut the engine, the quiet rushed in. For a moment, neither of them moved. Harper looked at the building, then at her own reflection faintly visible in the window glass. She could see her face, Ethan's profile, the hotel lights beyond. Her heart beat against her ribs. "You ready?" he asked. "No," she said. Then she added, "But I am here." He nodded once. "That counts." They stepped out of the truck. The evening air brushed cool against her bare legs. The scent of the harbor of water and metal, and faint gasoline mixed with perfume drifting from the open hotel doors. Side by side, they crossed the cracked pavement toward the entrance, their footsteps quiet against the worn stone. Inside, music and laughter floated up from the ballroom waiting. The sound hit them first. Music leaked out into the hallway, something upbeat from a decade ago, its bass slightly muffled by the closed ballroom doors. Laughter floated with it, bright and loose. The carpets in the lobby swallowed their footsteps, patterned in a swirl of gold and burgundy. that had seen too many years of shoes. A sign on an easel stood near the check-in table. Welcome Cedar Harbor High Class of 2013. The lettering tried to be festive. The tape at the corners showed. Harper's fingers clutched her bag so tight her knuckles blanched. Her eyes flicked from the sign to the table where a woman with reading glasses and a stack of name tags sat with a pen poised over a clipboard. "Hi, Harper," said voice thinner than usual. "Harper Quinn." The woman scanned a list, then smiled politely and peeled a sticker from the table. "Here you go. We used yearbook photos. Thought it would be fun." Fun. The picture on the badge was 17-year-old Harper, shoulders hunched, hair pulled into a messy ponytail, smile forced and small. The camera had caught her mid-blink. She looked like she was trying to disappear. Harper's stomach dipped. She pinned the badge to her dress, the edges crinkled against the fabric. "And for you?" the woman asked, looking up at Ethan. "Oh, I did not go here," he said. The woman nodded, reached for an extra blank tag and slid it toward him, along with a marker. "Partner, friend, emotionally supportive, +1. Write whatever you want." He wrote Ethan in block letters and stuck it to his shirt. As they walked away from the table, Harper's gaze snagged on a framed mirror along the wall. For a moment, she saw the reflection of two people who might have been any couple arriving at any event. The woman in green, the man in navy, their shoulders almost touching. Her pulse thudded in her throat. At the ballroom doors she slowed. Light spilled from the gap, golden and flickering. Voices rose and fell in waves on the other side. Ethan paused with her. "Do you want to take a minute?" he asked quietly. She swallowed. "If I take too many minutes, I'm going to end up in the parking lot." He held out his arm. It was a simple movement, no flourish, just a bent elbow, an offer of something solid. Her hand hovered for a second, then slid into the crook of his arm. The contact steadied her more than she expected. His body was warm through the fabric of his shirt. "Okay," she said mostly to herself. He pushed the door open. The room was bigger than she remembered. The ceiling sloped high above them, chandeliers humming with light. Round tables dotted the floor, draped in white cloths surrounded by chairs with gold covers. A buffet table lined the far wall, warmed trays releasing the smell of garlic and something creamy. Clusters of people stood in loose circles, name tags bright on their chests. Laughter bit at the air. Glasses clinked. Somewhere a woman let out a high shriek of recognition. Harper's feet hesitated on the threshold. For a heartbeat, she was 17 again, standing in the same doorway for a winter formal, tugging at the hem of a borrowed dress, scanning faces for any sign of safety. Ethan's arm shifted slightly under her hand, a reminder of weight and presence. They stepped inside. A few heads turned. A couple of faces lit up in bland politeness, the way people do when they do not quite remember who you are, but know they probably should. One or two sets of eyes skimmed over. Harper slid past, landed on Ethan instead, assessing. "Bar in the corner," Ethan murmured. "Later," she said. They moved slowly, giving Harper time to adjust. The music swelled a chorus. Everyone around them seemed half to know. A man with thinning hair waved at her with a grin that suggested he had no idea what to say after hello. She lifted a hand and returned small. Then her gaze caught on a familiar figure across the room. Madison Blake stood by the bar, flanked by three other women. She wore a sleek black dress, something that clung in all the places she liked to show off. Her blonde hair fell in smooth curls around her shoulders. Her name tag sat slightly askew, the yearbook photo beneath it, showing a younger version who looked almost identical, minus the fine lines at the corners of her mouth. Madison was laughing, head tipped back, hand on another woman's arm. The movement was practiced. People around her tilted toward the sound. Harper's stomach clenched so hard she had to breathe through it. Madison's eyes swept the room as she talked the way they always had, cataloging. Her gaze drifted past the DJ table over the buffet toward the doors. She saw them. For a second, her expression did not change, as if her brain needed a moment to place the face in front of her. Then recognition flared sharp and bright. Her lips parted in something like surprise. She excused herself from her circle with a light touch on someone's arm and started across the floor. Every step she took seemed to echo, even though the music and chatter had not stopped. Harper's shoulders rose before she could stop them, her hand tightening on Ethan's arm. He felt the change and glanced down, following her line of sight. Madison closed the distance in neat, confident strides. "Harper Quinn," she said, the words tasting of wine and something sweet. Wow. Up close, the years had made subtle adjustments. Tiny lines near her eyes, a faint dryness at the edges of her mouth. The shine in her hair, the expensive gloss on her lips, the practiced tilt of her chin were all intact. "I almost did not recognize you without your big hoodie," she added with a light laugh. The sound tumbled into the space between them, identical in tone to the one that had once followed Harper down a hallway lined with lockers. Harper's throat dried. Her voice shrank. "Hi, Madison," she managed. Madison's gaze moved slow and assessing from Harper's face to the dress along each curve. Her eyes lingered a fraction too long at Harper's waist. Her smile tightened. "You look different," Madison said. "All dressed up. Good for you." The words were technically polite. The way she said them wrapped each syllable in a layer of sugar so thin it nearly cracked. Ethan felt Harper's fingers dig into his sleeve. Madison turned to him, then her interest sharpening. "And who is this?" she asked. "Did you finally get yourself a boyfriend, Quinn?" she said finally, like she was delivering a punchline to an old joke. "This is Ethan Harper," said. Her voice wobbled. "Nice to meet you, Ethan," Madison said. Her eyes traveled from his shirt to the veins at his wrists to his jaw. "I was in school with Harper. She was so quiet back then, always hiding behind a book, or behind lockers, or behind her hair." The women behind Madison had drifted closer. They wore similar dresses in different colors, their makeup carefully done. Harper recognized one as the girl who had once pretended to trip so she could spill soda all over Harper's lunch tray, then apologized loudly and mockingly in front of everyone. The room seemed to tilt. The air felt thinner. Sounds stretched warped. The song playing blurred into a distant thump. Harper's mind flipped through images it had tried to file away for years. A note on her desk that read, "Diet please" in bubble letters. Laughter in the locker room when she changed for gym. Madison's voice telling someone just loud enough to hear, she would be pretty if there was less of her. Her body responded before she could talk herself down. Her heart raced. Her palms dampened. Her mouth went dry. "Remember that time at the spring dance?" Madison continued, still smiling. "When you stood in the corner for 2 hours and then went home early, we all took bets on whether you would actually show up." Harper's tongue felt like it did not belong in her own mouth. The room narrowed to Madison's face, the amused sheen in her eyes, the tilt of her head. The words slid over her like oil. She wanted to sink into the floor. Beside her, Ethan's jaw tightened. He had been quiet, letting Harper lead, letting her decide how much she wanted to engage. He had told himself to follow her cues, to only step in if she needed him. He watched her shoulders creep up, watched the color drain from her face. He saw the way she stared at a point somewhere near Madison's shoulder, instead of her eyes. He recognized the look. He heard another voice in his own past, a different hallway, different words that carried the same shape. Trash, cheap, nothing. His fingers flexed once, then stilled. Madison shifted her weight, still facing him. "So, what do you do, Ethan?" she asked. "Aside from being brave enough to escort our little wallflower." He set his cup down on the nearest table. The paper clinked softly against glass. "That is enough," he said. He did not raise his voice. He did not have to. The words held a weight that pulled the conversation to a stop. Madison blinked, startled. The smile on her mouth stayed in place, but something in her eyes flickered. "I am sorry," she said with an exaggerated innocence. "Did I say something wrong?" "Yes," he answered. The music still played. People were still talking around them. Yet the space within a few feet of where they stood felt oddly quiet. A couple nearby slowed their conversation, ears tilting in their direction. Ethan stepped a fraction forward. Harper's hand slipped from his arm as he moved, leaving him standing more squarely between her and Madison. "You probably have a different version of high school in your head," he said. "But from where I am standing, this sounds a lot like you trying to make someone feel small." Madison's chin lifted. "It was just a joke," she replied. He shook his head once. "No, jokes are supposed to be funny for everyone." Her mouth pressed into a thin line. "I think Harper can speak for herself." "She can," he said. "Right now she is busy trying not to pass out while you pick her apart like it is still 10th grade. A flush rose at Madison's throat. It spread upward, pinking the skin just above the neckline of her dress. "You do not even know her," she said. He glanced back at Harper just for a second. Her eyes met his, wide and wet. Then he faced Madison again. "I know enough," he said. "I know she has been making my coffee every morning for 2 years. I know she remembers exactly how I take it, even when the line is out the door. I know she draws little lighthouses on receipts on days I look like I need them." He gestured slightly, palm up. "I know my daughter was so shy she would not speak above a whisper to anyone for months, and your so-called wallflower sat on the floor beside her one day and convinced her to try a cookie shaped like a blob and call it a lighthouse. She remembers that my kid likes extra sprinkles. She asks about her by name." He held Madison's gaze. "You know what you remember about her?" he went on. "Her clothes, her body, how easy it was to make her flinch. You are standing here 10 years later still treating her like a game. That is not nostalgia. That is you showing everyone in this room who you still are. A small silence rippled out from them. The circle around Madison shifted. One of her friends looked down at her drink as if it had suddenly become fascinating. Madison's smile had vanished. Her lips pressed together so tightly the color drained from them. "You do not get to come in here and judge me," she said, anger creeping into her voice. "You were not there." "You are right," he said. "I was not." He tipped his head slightly toward Harper. But she was. Every day. And she survived it, which is more than can be said for the version of you who thought cruelty was a personality. A murmur stirred near the bar. Someone had stopped mid-sip. The DJ glanced over, hand hovering near the volume knob. Madison swallowed. Her eyes flicked around and saw for the first time how many people were watching. Recognition dawned that this room did not belong only to her anymore. Her shoulders squared, whatever she said gathering what was left of her composure. "Enjoy your night, Harper." She turned on her heel and walked back toward her original circle. The click of her heels felt louder than the music for a few seconds. Her friends hesitated, then followed slightly out of sync. The tight band around Harper's chest loosened all at once. She let out a breath she did not know she had been holding. Her knees felt like they might give. Ethan half turned, ready to catch her if she swayed. "You all right?" he asked low. She nodded, though her eyes glistened. A tear escaped and ran a warm line down her cheek. She brushed at it with the back of her hand, then laughed, startled by the sound. "I am crying at my high school reunion," she said. "Of course." Ethan reached up, thumb brushing away a wet streak she had missed. His touch was gentle, careful. "Anyone who made you feel like you did not deserve someone in your corner was lying," he said. Her breath hitched. "No one has ever done that before," she said. "Not like that. Not where people could see." He did not answer right away. There was nothing clever to say. He just looked at her, really looked as if trying to memorize the exact way she stood there, in the green dress with her badge still slightly crumpled on her chest. A movement at the edge of their small bubble drew Harper's attention. A woman stood a few feet away, hovering as if she was not sure she should come closer. She wore a simple blue dress and flats. Her name tag read, Tara Nguyen. The yearbook photo beneath showed a younger version with the same straight dark hair and wary eyes. "Harper," she said, voice tentative. Harper blinked, searching her memory. A face in the second row of history class. Someone who had copied her notes once and said thanks under her breath. Someone who had hung back at the edges of Madison's circle, never laughing as loud as the others. Tara Harper said, "Hi." Tara exhaled like she had been holding the air in her lungs for the entire exchange. "I do not want to interrupt," she said quickly. I have wanted to say something since I saw your name on the list, and I did not know if I would get a chance." She twisted the stem of her glass. "I did not join in," she said, "with what they did. I hope you know that. I never called you names. I never taped anything to your locker. But I also did not stop them. I laughed sometimes because I was afraid not to. I was scared of becoming their target too." Her eyes met Harper's, full of something like shame. "That does not excuse anything," Tara said. "I am sorry. I should have been braver." Harper's first instinct was to shrug it off, to say it was fine, that it was all years ago, and none of it mattered. The words came up and stalled. She thought of the girl who had walked these halls 10 years ago, who had scanned every face hoping for one person who might stand next to her. Tara had not. Not then. But she was standing here now. "Thank you," Harper said. Tara's brows pulled together, confusion flickering for a second. "For saying it," Harper clarified. "You are right. You could have done more. So could a lot of people. It hurt. For a long time. But I am still here. I am not hiding in the bathroom. And you are here now telling the truth to my face. That has to count for something." Tara's shoulders dropped. "I am glad you came," she said. "And for what it is worth, your boyfriend is terrifying in a very satisfying way." Heat crept up Harper's neck. "He is not. We are not. It is complicated." Tara smiled, genuine this time. "Either way, I am glad someone is in your corner." She squeezed Harper's arm lightly, nodded at Ethan, then melted back into the crowd. Harper watched her go, then looked around the room. The ballroom had not changed. The carpet was the same pattern. The chandeliers still tried too hard. The music was loud. People were older, softer around the edges, some balder, some more polished. Yet something in the space felt different, or maybe it was only her. She turned back to Ethan. "Thank you," she said. "You already said that," he replied. "I will probably say it a lot," she said. "You might get sick of it." He shook his head and the hint of a smile touching his mouth. "Come on," he said. Let me get you a drink that will probably be terrible." She laughed a sound that felt looser than before, and let him steer them toward the bar, the weight of 1,000 old moments shifting, making room for something new. The line at the bar was short. A few people hovered with plastic cups and small talk hanging between them like steam. "What is your poison?" Ethan asked. "Whatever tastes least like regret," Harper said. "White wine, I guess. Or something pretending to be it." He ordered a beer for himself and the house white for her. The bartender poured it from a bottle that had seen better days. The liquid sloshed pale and flat into her cup. Harper took a cautious sip. It was sour and a little too warm. "Regret," she confirmed. "Accurate." "Good thing we did not come for the drinks," he said. They moved aside to let others order. From this angle, the room looked wider. The clusters of people seemed less like obstacles and more like orbiting planets, each with its own pull. A familiar voice floated from behind them. Harper Quinn." She turned. A man with sandy hair and a soft middle stood a few feet away, cup in hand. His name tag read Eric Danvers. The yearbook picture under it showed a boy in a varsity jacket. "Hi," she said, surprise loosening her tone. "Eric, you look great," he said. And this time the words landed without the sting that had come from Madison. His gaze stayed on her face. "This is going to sound weird, but I have to tell you something before I chicken out." She tensed slightly. He saw it and winced. "Nothing bad," he added quickly. "I promise. Actually, the opposite." He shifted his weight. "We had English together. Junior year. You sat near the window. I spent half that class trying to figure out how to say hi without sounding stupid. You always had these doodles in the margins of your notes. Little moons and plants and things. I thought they were cool." Harper blinked. The image returned Mrs. Porter's classroom third period, the smell of old books and dry erase markers. Her notebook opened tiny drawings blooming along the edges because looking directly at people felt like staring into the sun. "I had no idea," she said. "Yeah, well," he shrugged. "Madison and her crew sort of owned the air around you. I was a coward. I let it be like that. I should not have, but I did." He offered half a smile. "I just wanted you to know that not everyone was laughing. Some of us were just quiet." The tight spot in her chest eased another fraction. "Thanks," she said, "for telling me." He nodded, then glanced at Ethan. "You picked a good one," he said, raising his cup. "I know," Ethan replied. Eric disappeared back into the crowd. Harper watched him go, the younger version in her head, blurring against the older one in front of her. The edges of high school shifted again, less solid than before. The DJ switched songs. Something slower, the kind that usually drew people to the dance floor in pairs. Ethan hesitated. "Do you dance?" he asked. "Only in my kitchen," she said, "with an audience of one dying spider plant." "We can work with that," he said. He set his beer down on a tall table and held out his hand. Her fingers hovered above his for a second, then settled. His hand was rougher than it looked, calloused from years of work. Warm. They stepped onto the edge of the dance floor, where the light was softer. Bodies swayed around them. The chandelier above cast tiny reflections in the wine in her cup. "I should warn you," Ethan said. "I am not good at this." "You say that like I am," she replied. He placed one hand at her waist, gentle, as if afraid to hold too tight. They rocked back and forth in something that was not really a formal step, more like an agreement to move in the same direction. His shoulder brushed her cheek. She could smell his cologne, something faint and clean, mixed with the deeper scent of sawdust that clung to him no matter what he wore. At first her muscles stayed coiled, waiting for the misstep, the comment, the snicker. But the only sounds near them were the music and the murmur of nearby conversations. No one pointed, no one stared. She let her eyes close for a moment. "Did you dance in high school?" she asked. "A couple of times," he said. "Badly." "Same," she said. "Except the badly part happened in my head because I did not get to the floor." "Seems like we are making up for it," he said. She opened her eyes. His gaze was steady, not intense, just present. It made her feel less like she was being examined and more like she was being seen. They bumped lightly into another couple. Ethan muttered an apology and adjusted their direction. Harper laughed quietly. "I think you are underselling your talent," she said. "I have many skills," he said. "Most of them involve power tools." The song ended. The DJ slid into another louder track. They drifted off the floor, not quite ready to leave the pocket of calm they had found. Near the far wall, a set of glass doors led to a small balcony. A few people stood there, the glow of their phones bright in the dimness. The doors were cracked, letting in a thin slice of night air. "Want to get some air?" Ethan asked. "Yes," she said, "before my face melts off." They stepped outside. The balcony overlooked the harbor. Below, the parking lot spread in a patchwork of asphalt and parked cars. Beyond that, the dark expanse of water stretched toward the faint outline of the opposite shore. In the distance, the Cedar Harbor lighthouse blinked at intervals, a slow, patient pulse. The air was cooler here. The sounds of the ballroom softened once the door swung shut behind them, reduced to a hum and occasional burst of laughter. They leaned against the railing shoulder-to-shoulder cups, resting on the cold metal. For a while they did not speak, their breath misted faintly in front of them. A gull cried over the water, a thin, lonely sound. Harper wrapped her free arm around her middle. Her heart had finally slowed to a normal rhythm. The adrenaline that had carried her through the confrontation with Madison was draining, leaving a strange lightness in its place, and a tiredness that reached bone deep. "How are you doing?" Ethan asked quietly. She thought about lying, saying fine and leaving it at that. The word felt flimsy. "Shaken," she said instead. "But, okay, I guess." He nodded. "You handled it." "I did not really do anything," she said. "You did." "You walked in," he said. "That is not nothing." She let that sit between them. "The thing is," she said, fingers tracing the rim of her cup, "I told myself that I was over it, that I had moved on, grown up. But the second I saw her, I felt like I was 17 again, and my whole body remembered what it felt like to be the joke." He listened, not interrupting. "In the locker room," she went on, "one of the girls used to say that I took up too much space. On the bench and pictures in the air. It got into my head. I started counting how many chairs I sat on in a day, how many steps it took me to get from one class to another, how many bites were on my plate." She laughed once short. "I still do it sometimes, just silently." The lighthouse blinked again in the distance. "People say a lot of things when they are kids," Ethan said. "About other people, about themselves. You do not have to keep carrying those sentences around." "It is not that easy," she said. "I did not say it was easy," he replied. "Just that you do not have to." She looked at him. His profile was lit by the warm light from inside and the cooler glow of the sky. There were lines at the corners of his eyes etched by years that had not all been kind. "What about you?" she said. "What did they say about you?" He let out a breath through his nose, fogging the air. "We moved around a lot when I was a kid," he said. "My dad bounced between jobs. We lived in a trailer for a while. Hand-me-down clothes, lunch in a brown bag that smelled like the fridge. It made me a target." He kept his gaze on the water. "Trash," he said. "Trailer boy, dumpster." They were very creative. She flinched at the word, even though it was not aimed at her. "Middle school was the worst," he added. "High school was better. I found shop class. Figured out I was good with my hands. People respected that more. Or they needed a bookshelf built and decided not to spit on the guy doing it. There was no bitterness in his tone, just a tired acceptance. I thought if I worked hard enough, got strong enough, made enough money, it would erase it," he said. "Turns out it does not. It just gets quieter until something makes it loud again. Like being in a room full of teenagers who got older but not always kinder," she said. Like that, he agreed. They fell quiet. The lighthouse blinked again, steady as a heartbeat. "Thank you for saying yes," she said. He glanced at her. "To tonight." "Yes," she said. "To tonight. To standing up for me. To making it easier to breathe in there." "You do not owe me thanks," he said. "I want to give it anyway," she replied. Her cup was empty. She set it on the railing. "The woman on the sign-in," she said they used yearbook photos for the name tags. I looked at mine and I did not even recognize myself. Not because I look so different now, but because she looked that scared. I did not know it showed that much. "I do not see scared when I look at it," he said. "I see someone who was trying very hard to hold it together." She swallowed the lump in her throat. "Do you miss her?" she asked softly. "Your wife?" The question hung there, delicate and dangerous. For a second she wondered if she had pushed too far. He took a slow breath. "Every day," he said. There was no dramatic break in his voice, just a quiet steadiness that made the words land heavier. "When we found out about the aneurysm," he said, it was in past tense. She had already collapsed. One moment we were talking about whether Maisie should get a goldfish, and the next she was on the floor. The doctor said there was nothing anyone could have done, but it still felt like I had missed something, some sign. He stared at his hands. "After that, my world was work, and a toddler," he said. "Eat when she eats, sleep when she sleeps, try not to lose anything important. I did not go anywhere, I did not absolutely have to." "And then you started coming to Lighthouse," Harper said. "And then I started coming to Lighthouse," he echoed. "At first because I needed caffeine, then because it was the only place that did not make me feel like the walls were closing in. With you behind the counter, it felt less like another room I did not fit in, and more like a spot that was just there, solid." Her chest warmed. "You know, I used to rehearse small talk for you," she admitted, "in my head, while the espresso was pulling. You would walk in and I would think, today I will ask how his day is going without sounding like a script. Then I would say something like, busy morning, and you would say, yeah, and that would be it. That is still more socializing than I was doing anywhere else, he said. Progress, she said. Progress, he agreed. Someone opened the balcony door behind them, letting a burst of music and warmth spill out, then closed it again. The moment stretched comfortable. We should go back in, she said at last, appearances and all. We have been standing in plain sight on a balcony, he said. I think we are covering it. She smiled. I meant before the buffet runs out of edible things. Good point, he said. They re-entered the ballroom, cheeks cooled by the night air. A few more people approached Harper, some with quick compliments, some with small apologies wrapped in awkward phrases. She navigated them with growing ease, anchored by the steady presence at her side. Later, when the crowd began to thin and the DJ turned the music down a notch, Ethan checked the time. I should get you home, he said. It has been a long day. She glanced at the clock on the far wall and nodded. Yeah, before my feet fuse to these shoes. As they walked out, a few voices called her name in genuine farewell. She waved her smile easier now. The hallway felt less like a tunnel and more like just a hallway. Outside, the night had grown colder. The air smelled of damp concrete and distant salt. They walked to the truck in silence, the crunch of gravel underfoot the only sound. In the cab, she exhaled as soon as the door shut, as if the vehicle formed a small private bubble where she could finally let her shoulders fall. Thank you again, she said. I know I keep repeating myself. I am aware I am annoying. You are not annoying, he said. You are grateful. That is different. He backed out of the parking spot and steered onto the road. The hotel receded in the rearview mirror, its lit windows shrinking. The drive through town was quieter than the ride there had been. Streetlights painted the pavement in alternating bands of gold and shadow. Most of the shops were dark now. A few bars still glowed, their signs reflected in puddles. What are you thinking about? He asked after a few minutes. How weird it is that a room can hold so many versions of you, she said. The one you were, the one you thought you were, the one everyone else decided you were. They all show up at once just to see if you will fall apart. And he asked. I did not, she said. Not completely. That sounds like a win, he said. Feels like one, she admitted. They passed the park. The swings moved slightly and the breeze empty. Harper watched them until they were out of sight. You know, he said after another stretch of silence, we could, if you wanted, have dinner sometime. Not fancy. Just food that is not from a buffet tray. She turned her head. The side of his face was lit by the dashboard. He kept his eyes on the road. Like a real dinner, she asked. Not a reunion combat mission. Like a real dinner, he said. At my place, maybe. Or yours. I usually cook too much for two people anyway. Her heart gave a small leap. I would like that, she said. As long as your daughter is there, if she wants to be. You talk about her like she is the actual boss of your life, so I should probably get her approval. A smile tugged at his mouth. She kind of is, he said. And she already likes you. She just does not know it yet. You told her about me, Harper asked, surprised. She met you once, he said. You gave her a cookie and told her it was a lighthouse. She has been talking about the funny coffee lady ever since. Warmth spread through her chest, slow and steady. Then yes, she said. Dinner with the boss. He nodded like some small internal decision had settled. They reached her building. He pulled up to the curb and put the truck in park. The stairwell light glowed weakly through the glass front door. The street was quiet, only a distant car passing at the far end. Do you want me to walk you up? He asked. She considered it, then shook her head. I think I can handle the stairs, she said. I faced Madison. For tonight, that feels like enough heroics. He chuckled. Fair. She unfastened her seatbelt and hesitated, hand on the door handle. Good night, Ethan, she said. And thank you for being my pretend boyfriend. He met her eyes. Anytime he said, and you know, pretending did not feel much like pretending. Heat flared in her cheeks. Careful, she said, lips curving. You are starting to sound like the bad dialogue in a romance novel. Guess I need to read better books, he replied. She opened the door and stepped out into the cool air. At the top of the stairs, she looked back. He was still there, waiting until she reached her floor. When she disappeared from his view, he started the engine, the truck headlights cutting through the night as he headed home, his mind already turning over what to cook for dinner with the funny coffee lady and the girl who had once written a letter she had never shown him. 2 days passed before they settled on a night. Thursday after work. Harper stood in front of her open fridge that afternoon, staring at the shelves. Half a carton of eggs, a jar of pickles, leftover soup in a container she did not trust. None of it looked like I am a functional adult who can feed another person. She shut the door and grabbed her phone. "Do you mind if I just bring dessert?" she typed. "Promise it is edible, most of the time." His reply came a minute later. "Dessert sounds perfect. We have real food covered." Maisie insists on helping. The sight of his daughter's name in the text made something warm flicker in her chest. She packed a grocery bag with flour, sugar, chocolate chips, vanilla, and the dog-eared notebook where she kept recipes. At the last second, she tossed in a pack of star-shaped sprinkles too bright to ignore. The late afternoon light had turned gold by the time she stood on Ethan's porch. His house sat on a quiet street, lined with small yards and older trees. The paint on the steps was a little worn. A bicycle lay on the lawn, half on its side, as if someone had dropped it mid-adventure. Her heart bumped hard against her ribs as she rang the bell. The door opened almost at once. Maisie peered out from behind it, one hand on the knob. Her hair was pulled into two crooked pigtails. There was a faint smudge of marker on her cheek. "Hi," Harper said. "I am Harper, remember?" Maisie nodded solemnly. "You saved my dad from boring coffee," she said. "Trying," Harper replied. "I brought cookie stuff. Is that acceptable to the boss?" Maisie eyed the bag in her hand. "Are there sprinkles?" she asked. "Always," Harper said, "for days that end in Y." A small smile tugged at the corner of the girl's mouth. She stepped back to let Harper in. The hallway smelled like something roasting in the oven and laundry detergent. Shoes and boots gathered near a bench by the door. Coats hung from hooks on the wall, one tiny pink jacket tucked between larger ones. Ethan came out from the kitchen wiping his hands on a dish towel. He had changed into a clean t-shirt and jeans. The air around him carried the scent of garlic and herbs. "You made it," he said. "So far," she answered, still waiting for the panic to kick in. "You will be fine," he said. "You have sugar on your side." A voice floated from the kitchen. "Is that our guest, or did you bring a whole marching band?" Helen appeared, drying her hands. She wore an apron with faded flowers and a kind but appraising expression. "This is my mother-in-law," Helen, Ethan said. "Helen, this is Harper." Harper shifted the grocery bag to one hand and offered the other. "Nice to meet you," she said. Helen took it in a firm grip. "You too. I have heard a suspicious amount about your muffins." "All good things, I hope," Harper said. Helen's eyes softened. "He could do worse in his choice of accomplices," she said. Then she added, "Kitchen is yours if you need it. I am just the backup." Maisie tugged at Harper's sleeve. "Come on," she said. "I want to crack the eggs." "Incredible," Harper said. "That is my favorite part." They moved into the kitchen. It was a lived-in space. Mismatched mugs on an open shelf. A drawing of what might have been a dinosaur or a dragon tacked to the fridge. A step stool pushed near the counter ready for small feet. Harper unloaded her bag lining ingredients on the counter. Maisie climbed onto the stool, eyes shining. "So, here's the plan," Harper said. "We make chocolate chip cookies, but we decorate some like stars to honor the sprinkles." "Are they magic?" Maisie asked. "Obviously," Harper said. "How else would they taste good?" Ethan leaned against the counter watching them. Helen chopped something at the stove, pretending not to pay attention, and failing. They fell into the easy rhythm of baking. Flour puffed into the air when Maisie poured too quickly. Harper laughed and wiped it off the girl's nose with a fingertip, leaving a white smudge. "You have a mustache now," she said. Maisie giggled, then reached out and brushed flour on Harper's cheek in revenge. "Now you do too." The bowl looked too small for all the ingredients they were determined to cram into it. Harper guided Maisie's hand as she cracked eggs, fishing out bits of shell with a practiced finger. Vanilla splashed onto the counter, filling the air with sweet scent. "Want to stir?" Harper asked. Maisie nodded so eagerly the stool wobbled. Ethan steadied it with one hand, his palm resting lightly on the back. "Careful," he said. "We do not need to explain to the emergency room how you got cookie dough in your hair." "Yes, we do," Maisie said. Steve said. "That would be funny." "Do not tempt fate," Helen called over her shoulder. Harper handed Maisie the wooden spoon. The batter resisted at first, thick and heavy, then slowly yielded. Chocolate chips rattled into the bowl like soft stones. When the first tray was ready, Harper dropped dough balls onto parchment and let Maisie press a few of the star sprinkles into the tops. "These are for us," Maisie said, pointing. "And these are for Grandma, and this one is for Dad." She shaped one lumpy cookie larger than the rest, adding extra chips. "Why is mine bigger?" Ethan asked. "You have a big head," she answered. Helen snorted. Harper bit the inside of her cheek to keep from laughing outright. The oven door opened, releasing a wave of heat. Cookies slid in. The smell began to creep through the house, warm and rich. As they waited, Maisie hopped down from the stool and hurried to the dining table, where a scattering of colored paper and crayons sat. A notebook lay open there too, its cover purple and worn at the corners. Harper followed. "What are you working on?" she asked. "My family tree," Maisie said. "For school. We have to draw people, not just stick figures. Miss Ramirez says faces with noses and everything." Harper glanced at the page. A big rectangle labeled "Me" sat near the middle. Lines connected it to two smaller rectangles above, one marked Dad, the other blank. She felt a small pinch in her chest. "You have some room there," she said gently. "That is, Mom," Maisie said quietly, tapping the empty box. "I do not know how to draw her." She reached for the notebook, flipping back a few pages. The purple cover flopped a little. Harper caught a glimpse of the first page filled with careful writing, in large letters, then looked away instinctively, giving privacy. "Do you have a picture of her?" Harper asked. "In Grandma's bedroom," Maisie said. "She says I can look at it whenever I want, but I do not know if I am doing her face right when I draw." Harper picked up a crayon, rolling it between her fingers. "What do you remember most?" she asked. Maisie squinted, thinking. Her hair was dark and curly, and she sang when she made pancakes, she said. "She always burned one and gave it to my dad because she said he could fix it." Harper smiled. "You could draw the pancakes," she suggested, "and maybe music notes. It does not have to look exactly like her. It just has to look like she feels." Maisie studied her for a moment, then nodded as if this made sense. She bent over the paper and began to draw circles on a plate near the mom box, adding little squiggles above for steam. The oven timer beeped. Harper went to pull the cookies out. The tray glowed faintly metal hot under the pads of her mitts. The cookies had spread and browned at the edges, chocolate chips glossy. The kitchen filled with the smell of sugar and butter. They ate them too soon, tongues tingling from the heat, chocolate threatening to drip. "This one was for Grandma," Maisie said around a bite. Helen waved a hand. "We can negotiate," she said. "I am old." I moved slowly. Cookies moved faster. Dinner was simple and good. Roasted chicken potatoes, a salad that Harper pretended not to be impressed by. They sat around the table under the yellow light of the overhead fixture, passing bowls and stories. Maisie chattered more as the evening went on, the initial shyness dissolving. She told Harper about school, about the class hamster that had escaped once and been found in the teacher's purse, about how she wanted to be an astronaut baker so she could make cookies in space. "Zero-gravity cookies," Harper said. "The crumbs would be a nightmare." "We will invent crumb-proof dough," Maisie said. "Dad can help. He fixes things." Ethan looked mildly alarmed. "I was not prepared to be drafted into space baking," he said. "You will manage," Helen said. "You always do." There was an ease here, Harper realized, that did not feel forced. It startled her a little. Most of her adult dinners had been eaten alone in front of a screen, or with a book propped open. This felt like stepping into a picture she had never let herself imagine too clearly. After the plates were cleared, Ethan insisted on doing the dishes. Harper dried and stacked them, bumping elbows with him at the sink. Maisie had gone back to the table with her crayons. Helen retreated to the living room armchair with a magazine, but her eyes flicked over to them frequently, a small, satisfied smile at the edges of her mouth. "So," Harper said, running a dish towel over a plate, "I did not embarrass myself." "Not even a little," Ethan said. "Maisie thinks you are some kind of kitchen wizard." "She did the heavy lifting," Harper said. "I just guided the chaos." He passed her another plate. Their fingers brushed, lingering half a second longer than necessary. Something unspoken hummed in the small space between them. Later, when dessert and dishes were finished, and Helen had gone home, Harper and Ethan stood by the door. Maisie hovered nearby with the purple notebook clutched to her chest. "Thank you for coming," Ethan said. "She had a good time." "So did I," Harper said. "You can call me any time you need someone to ruin your kitchen." "It has been worse," he said. "Once I tried to make cupcakes from scratch. It looked like a flour bomb went off." "I wish I had seen that," she said. "You might get the chance," he replied. Maisie stepped forward, still holding the notebook. "Do you have to go?" she asked. "For tonight," Harper said. "But I will see you again, if you want." Maisie nodded, serious. "Next time, can we decorate cookies that look like planets?" she asked. "Absolutely," Harper said. "We will need more sprinkles." Maisie seemed satisfied. She hugged Harper quickly, then darted back, cheeks pink, as if she was not quite used to the movement. As Harper left and walked down the path, she glanced back once. Ethan stood in the doorway with Maisie tucked against his side, the porch light casting a circle around them. It became a pattern after that. Thursday dinners turned into occasional Sundays. Some weeks Harper brought dessert, some weeks she showed up with takeout, insisting that not every meal had to involve chopping things. Ethan fixed a wobbly shelf in her apartment, in exchange his toolbox open on her floor, while she hovered nearby with coffee. Maisie grew less shy around her. She texted from Ethan's phone once, sending a blurry picture of a lopsided pancake with the caption, "Nailed it." Harper replied with a picture of a crooked muffin. They agreed it was a tie. Sometimes, on slow afternoons at Lighthouse, Harper found herself drawing not just lighthouses on receipts, but small stars, too, clustered in the margins. A quiet echo of the sprinkles in Ethan's kitchen and the tree Maisie was still working on at the table. The purple notebook stayed on that table, often closed, but within reach. Harper noticed how carefully Maisie handled it, fingers smoothing the worn cover, as if something important lived inside. She did not ask what was written there, not yet. Some things revealed themselves on their own time. The day it happened did not feel special at first. It was a gray Sunday, the kind Cedar Harbor specialized in. A steady light rain blurred the view from Ethan's front windows, turning the street into a watercolor of driveways and bare trees. Inside the house was warm and cluttered. The television in the living room murmured some nature documentary, volume low. The faint smell of tomato sauce drifted from the crock pot in the kitchen. Harper sat cross-legged on the floor of Maisie's room, surrounded by a sea of stuffed animals and colored pencils. A unicorn with one missing eye stared at her from a pile near the bookshelf. "This is not a room," Harper said. "This is a minor natural disaster." "It is a creative zone," Maisie replied. "Ms. Ramirez says chaos is part of the process." "She teaches art," Harper said, "not archaeology." Maisie flopped onto her bed, sending a pillow tumbling to the side. "Dad keeps saying we have to clean it anyway. Might as well do it with you." "That is both flattering and concerning," Harper said. "Hand me anything that looks like it could be alive." They worked slowly, sorting toys into bins, stacking books and crooked towers. The rain tapped at the window above the bed, steady and soft. At one point, Harper lifted the comforter to shake it out and saw crumbs tumble onto the sheet. "When did you last eat in here?" she asked. "Never," Maisie said quickly. "Uh-huh." Harper pulled the pillow toward her to fluff it. Something crinkled beneath it. She paused, fingers searching. A folded piece of paper lay flat against the mattress where the pillow had pressed it down. The edges were worn, the fold lines soft from being opened and closed. She picked it up without thinking. It was the size of a page torn from a notebook, pencil marks smudged faintly on the outside. Maisie sat up so fast her hair slapped her cheek. "Wait," she said, voice sharp. "That is private." Harper froze. "I am sorry," she said, already placing the paper back on the bed. "I did not know it was there." Maisie scrambled forward and grabbed it, clutching it with both hands. She stared at Harper, eyes big and uncertain. For a second they were at a standstill, breath loud in the small room. Rain ticked against the glass. Harper lifted her hands, palms up. "You do not have to show me," she said. "Really, I will pretend I never saw it." Maisie looked down at the paper. Her fingers tightened around the edges, wrinkling the surface. A long moment stretched. "It is for Mom," she said at last, voice very small. The words nudged the air out of Harper's lungs. "I understand," Harper said softly. Maisie swallowed. "I wrote it a long time ago," she said. "I keep it under my pillow so it is closer to dreams. Mrs. Ramirez said prayers go up. I thought maybe dreams do too." She smoothed the paper against her knees, trying to flatten the creases she had just made. "Sometimes I read it before I go to sleep," she added, "so she does not forget." Something in Harper's chest cracked open. "Can I sit with you while you read it?" Harper asked. "I will not look. I just do not want you to feel alone with it, unless you want to." Maisie studied her eyes, searching her face for a lie. She must not have found one because she scooted over on the bed. "You can read it," she whispered. "If you want." She already knows what it says. Her hand shook as she held out the paper. Harper accepted it as carefully as if it were made of glass. The pencil had faded in places, lines blurred where small fingers had traced the words again and again. The letters tilted and wobbled, some pressed harder into the page, leaving grooves. "Dear Mom in Heaven, I miss you every day." Harper's vision blurred at the edges. She blinked hard and kept going. "Dad looks tired a lot. He drinks coffee and does not sing the pancake song anymore. Sometimes he smiles, but it does not stay on his face long. I feel sad in my chest and I do not know how to fix it. Please send someone to help us. Someone who laughs and makes good cookies and does not mind that I talk a lot. Someone who will stay. Someone who will make Dad smile for real. I promise I will be good. I will do my homework and clean my room and not complain about broccoli too much. I love you, Mom. Love, Maisie." Harper's throat closed. Tears stung her eyes, hot and sudden. One dropped onto the page, darkening the paper in a small round stain. "Sorry," she murmured, wiping it quickly with her thumb as if she could erase the evidence. Maisie was watching her body curled around her knees. At the bottom, Maisie said, barely audible, "There is a date. Ms. Ramirez said that is important when you write letters. So, God can keep track." Harper looked. In careful pressed numbers, a date sat beneath the signature. October 19th. Her heart gave a strange lurch. The bedroom blurred for a moment. The rain, the scattered toys, the soft pink lamp in the corner, all of it slid out of focus and back in again. October 19th, she whispered. Her mind raced backward. The October morning at Lighthouse, when she had rushed through opening tasks, nerves humming. The way the air had smelled like wet leaves. The way her hands had shaken on Ethan's coffee cup. The feel of the cold sidewalk under her sneakers as she ran after him. Her voice calling his name. The wildness of the question spilling out. That day, her chest tightened so much it almost hurt. Harper Maisie said, frightened now. Are you mad? The question snapped her back. She looked up at the girl, saw the uncertainty in her face, the way her shoulders had crept toward her ears. No, Harper said quickly. No, sweetheart. I am not mad. Not at all. She set the letter carefully on the blanket and pulled Maisie into her arms. The little body yielded, sagging against her, like something that had been holding itself up too long. Maisie's arms wrapped around her neck, fierce and small. Harper held on one hand, cradling the back of her head. Maisie's breath hitched. I did not tell Dad, she said into Harper's shoulder. He was already sad. I did not want to make him more sad, so I just wrote it and put it under my pillow and hoped. Harper closed her eyes. Tears slipped down her face, warm tracks she did not bother to swipe away. You did a brave thing, she said. Her voice shook. You asked for help. The doorway creaked. Harper turned her head. Ethan stood there, one hand braced on the frame. His eyes went from Harper's wet face to Maisie clinging to her, then down to the letter on the bed. What happened? He asked, voice low. Maisie stiffened in Harper's arms. Harper loosened her hold just enough for the girl to peek out. Dad, Maisie whispered. Ethan stepped into the room, moving slowly, as if he were approaching a wild animal. It is okay, he said. Nobody is in trouble. Harper reached for the letter and held it out to him, fingers trembling. She said I could read it, she said quietly. I did not mean to pry. It was under her pillow. I did not know what it was. He took it from her hand, his fingers brushing hers. His gaze dropped to the page. He scanned the first few lines. His shoulders sank. He sat down on the edge of the bed as if his knees had given out. The room was quiet except for the rain and the faint hum of the house. He read every word. His jaw tightened at the mention of the pancake song. His throat moved when he reached the part about real smiles. When he came to the description of someone who laughs and makes good cookies and does not mind that I talk a lot, his eyes flicked up, landing on Harper for a moment. Then he looked at the bottom. October 19th. He read the date twice as if he might have misread the numbers. Do you remember when you wrote this? He asked, turning his head toward Maisie. She nodded against Harper's shoulder. The day it rained and you spilled coffee on your shirt, she said. You took a long time in the morning. I had to put my socks on by myself. I wrote it before Grandma came. His mind moved through the memory like stepping stones. That morning, the coffee stain. His brain fogged with fatigue, the way the day had felt heavier than usual as he pulled on his jacket. The moment at Lighthouse when a woman with wide eyes and shaking hands had run after him, calling his name. He looked at Harper again. She met his gaze, her own eyes swollen and red. They stared at each other, the date sitting between them like a small, impossible lighthouse of its own. October 19th, she said again. That was the morning I asked you to pretend. He let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh and almost like a sob. Maisie shifted, pulling back enough to see both their faces. You came, she said to Harper, as if announcing a conclusion. I asked Mom to send someone, and then you came. The certainty in her tone made Harper's throat close. I did, Harper said. I did come. Ethan placed the letter gently on the quilt and reached for his daughter. He pulled both of them into his arms, his hand spanning the small of Harper's back, the other cradling Maisie. They stayed like that for a while, tangled together on the messy bed, all three breathing in the same small space. The room smelled like crayons and laundry and rain on old wood. I hid it under my pillow so Mom could find it easier, Maisie said, words muffled by Ethan's shirt. So she would not miss it. I do not think she missed it, Ethan said. His voice was rough now, frayed at the edges. Later, when Maisie's tears had slowed and the weight of the day started to pull at her, Harper carried her to the living room. They settled on the couch together, Maisie curled into Harper's side like a cat. Ethan draped an old blanket over them. The documentary on the television flickered with images of birds flying over mountains. None of them were watching. Maisie's eyes drooped. She fought at fingers still curled in the fabric of Harper's sleeve, but sleep crept in. Her breathing evened out. I will put her to bed, Ethan said softly. Harper nodded. She eased out from under the small weight, careful not to wake her. Ethan scooped his daughter up, the practiced movement easy and tender. She sighed and burrowed into his chest. Harper watched him disappear down the hallway. The house felt strangely quiet without Maisie's small voice filling it. On the coffee table, the letter lay where Ethan had said it, smoothed out, no longer hidden. The pencil strokes looked darker in the lamplight. Harper picked it up again, reading the words slowly, as if they might change. When Ethan came back, his footsteps were soft. He stopped behind the couch for a second, looking at her and the paper in her hands. "I had no idea," he said. She looked up. "About the letter." "About what she was carrying," he said. "I knew she missed her mom. Of course she did. I did not know she turned it into this. Into a request." "It is a good request," Harper said, trying to smile, and failing. "She has high standards." He walked around the couch and sat beside her. The cushion dipped under his weight. For a moment, they just sat there, shoulder to shoulder. The letter rested across both their knees now. "Do you believe in that kind of thing?" she asked quietly. "Prayers, signs." He stared at his hands. "I did not," he said. "For a long time. After Olivia died, every time someone said everything happens for a reason, I wanted to break something. There is no reason good enough for that." He reached up and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "But this," he said, nodding toward the page, "this feels like more than chance. A 7-year-old writes to her mother asking for someone who laughs and makes cookies and will stay. Same day, a woman who laughs and makes cookies runs after me in the rain to ask for help." He gave a small, incredulous huff of air. "If it is coincidence, it is a very specific one," he said. "I keep thinking," Harper said, "what if I had deleted that email? What if I had never run after you? She would still have written this. It would still be under her pillow, but I would not be here." "You are here," he said. She nodded, throat thick. "Yes," she said. "I am." He turned, slightly facing her more fully. "Harper," he said. She looked at him. The living room lamp cast a soft circle around them. Shadows pooled at the edges of the room. The rain had slowed to a whisper at the windows. "I love you," he said. The words were simple. No ceremony, no build-up, just set gently between them. Her first instinct was to check if she had heard him right. Her second was to question whether he meant it the way she did. She saw none of the uncertainty she feared in his face, only a quiet, steady truth. "I was not looking for this," he said. "I was trying very hard not to look for anything. Losing Olivia broke something in me. I put walls up and told myself it was safer that way. For me, for Maisie. Then you came along with your lighthouses on coffee cups and your bad jokes about Mondays, and you did this thing where you made the day feel less heavy without asking for anything in return." He glanced down at the letter again. "I do not know if Olivia had anything to do with this," he said. "If she could hear our girl and nudge the world in your direction. But whether she did or not, I am grateful. You are exactly what we needed, and I did not know how to ask for it." Tears burned her eyes again, fresh and hot. "You have every reason to be careful," she said. "You have Maisie. You have all the hurt from before. I never want to be something that adds to that." "You are not," he said. "You are the opposite. And I know it is fast and messy, and we are both still figuring ourselves out. But when I think about family now, you are in that picture, whether the paper has a label for you or not." Her heart felt too big for her chest. "I love you," she said. The words came out soft but sure. "I love you both so much it scares me a little." "Me too," he said. The scared part and the love part. He reached for her hand. She gave it, their fingers threading together easily, like this was what they had been practicing for week after week without naming it. They sat there for a long time, hand in hand, the letter between them, the house breathing quietly around them, as if it too was adjusting to the shape of this new truth. They did not rush. Life folded around the new shape of them first. There were school mornings and late invoices nights when Maisie climbed into their bed after a bad dream, and Harper woke with a small heel pressed into her ribs. There were slow Sundays with pancakes that did not always burn, and arguments about whether sprinkles counted as breakfast. The wedding came the following spring. Lighthouse Coffee and Books smelled like espresso and lemon cleaner that morning. Mrs. Lopez had insisted that they use the shop. "If this place can survive teenagers with laptops for hours, it can handle a little love," she had said, waving away their attempt to pay her. "I will cry and mess up all the photos. That is my only fee." They moved tables against the walls and draped them with white cloths. Strings of small lights ran along the beams overhead, twining among the exposed pipes. Jars filled with wildflowers sat on the counter between the register and the pastry case. The front windows looked out at the harbor. Boats bobbed gently, their masts making thin lines against the pale blue sky. Harper stood in the small staff room that she had used as a break space for years. Now someone had leaned a mirror against the wall and taped a sprig of baby's breath to the top. She faced her reflection in a simple ivory dress that skimmed her curves. Her hair fell around her shoulders in soft waves. The old instinct to critique her body stirred, automatic and sharp. Her stomach, her arms, the way the fabric clung. Then she thought about the way Ethan had looked at her when she stepped out of the dressing room, at the store eyes soft and bright. She thought about the way Maisie had clapped and said, "You look like you belong in a storybook." The voice in her head went quieter. Helen stood behind her, adjusting the small cluster of flowers at the back of her hair. "You look lovely," Helen said. "Olivia would approve of your taste." Harper met her eyes in the mirror. There was a thread of grief in Helen's gaze, but also something warmer that Harper had come to recognize. "Thank you," Harper said. In the front of the shop, chairs had been arranged in rows. A handful of friends and family filled them. Contractors Ethan worked with, one of Harper's regulars who always tipped too much and had cried when she announced she was taking the afternoon off to get married. Tara sat near the middle, smoothing her dress over her knees, a small smile on her face. Maisie took her role as flower girl seriously. She wore a blue dress and carried a small basket. She had decided that lighthouses were too hard to scatter, so she had talked Harper into cutting small paper stars to mix with the petals. The result fluttered onto the floor as she walked, white and blue and soft pink shapes spinning gently. When Harper stepped through the doorway to the main room, Ethan was already at the front waiting. He wore a white shirt and a tie that did not quite sit straight, navy pants, and an expression that made everything else blur. Someone, probably Helen, had tamed his hair with gel. His name tag from the reunion lay in a drawer somewhere at home. Today there was no need to announce him. The music was simple, a guitar track from a playlist. Harper walked the narrow aisle with her heart pounding in her ears and the smell of coffee grounding her with every step. She reached him. For a second they just looked at each other, the rest of the room dropping away. "You clean up well," she whispered. "You always look like this to me," he said. The officiant was a friend of Mrs. Lopez, a retired teacher with kind eyes. He spoke briefly, giving space instead to the vows they had written. Ethan went first. "When we met, I thought you were just someone who made my mornings easier," he said. "I did not know you were going to make my life bigger. You walked into a world I had shrunk down to something safe and quiet, and you lit it up. You made my daughter laugh. You made my kitchen smell like cookies. You did not ask me to be anyone but the man standing in front of you. I promised to keep trying to be worthy of that." Harper's hands shook as she unfolded her own paper. "I spent a lot of years believing I took up too much space," she said. "Then you and Maisie showed me that maybe I was just in the wrong rooms. In this room right now, I feel exactly right. I promise to stand beside you when things are easy and when they are not. I promise to listen even when it is hard. And I promise there will always be at least one cookie jar in our house that is never empty." A ripple of laughter moved through the chairs. Maisie beamed. When they kissed, someone near the back sniffled loudly. Harper suspected Mrs. Lopez. Later, after cake and clinking cups and a dance squeezed awkwardly between tables, the three of them stood together by the front windows. The harbor beyond the glass shimmered with evening light. Lighthouses on napkins and drawn on a chalkboard sign echoed the real one blinking in the distance. Maisie wove her fingers through theirs. "So now we are officially official," she said. "We are," Ethan agreed. "I think Mom would like this," she added quietly. Harper squeezed her hand. "I hope so," she said. Time moved forward. They did not stay in the small house forever. Work picked up at the workshop. Harper took on a little more responsibility at Lighthouse. Savings grew slowly. A fixer-upper on a quieter street came on the market with peeling paint and good bones, and a living room with a wall that begged for something important. They moved in one damp autumn weekend. Boxes stacked in corners labeled in different handwritings. Friends carried furniture. Helen organized the kitchen with the efficiency of someone who had done this too many times. The letter came with them, carefully packed between two pieces of cardboard. On the second evening, with the couch finally in place and the television still not mounted, Ethan spread the letter on the dining table. "I do not want it to live under a pillow anymore," he said. Harper traced the familiar grooves of the pencil with her eyes. Maisie, now taller and missing two front teeth, leaned against the table beside him. "Where should it go?" Harper asked. "Where we see it," Maisie said. "Oh," Maisie said. "Not just me." They found a simple frame at a thrift store. The glass smudged but intact. Harper cleaned it, then slid the letter in, smoothing it carefully, so no crease hid the date at the bottom. Ethan held the nail while Harper tapped it into the wall in the center of the living room, between the front window and the hallway. The frame page hung there slightly askew. He stepped back. "Look straight to me," he said. "It is crooked," Harper said, and adjusted it a fraction. They stood together in front of it. The words were familiar now, yet seeing them elevated like this changed something. It felt less like a secret plea and more like part of their story written down and acknowledged. "Hi, Mom," Maisie said to the frame. "We made it." Months slipped into each other. Holidays came and went, marked by construction paper decorations and flour on the countertops. There were dentist appointments and parent-teacher conferences. There were nights when everyone went to bed early because the day had simply been too long. One evening after Maisie was asleep and the dishes were done, Harper sat with her laptop at the dining table. The glow from the screen lit her face, the rest of the room falling into gentle shadow. Behind her, the framed letter caught a faint reflection. She scrolled through her messages, answering a note from Tara about a book recommendation clearing junk. A red notification blinked at the top of her social media page. New message request. She clicked. The name at the top of the message thread made her stop breathing for a second. Madison Blake. Harper stared at it. The profile picture was different from the one in her memory. Less polished, taken in natural light hair, pulled back, no heavy makeup. A quiet park in the background. Her cursor hovered over the message. Curiosity and old dread wrestled in her chest. She clicked. The message was longer than she expected. It started formally, then loosened. "Harper, I do not know if you want to hear from me. I would understand if you deleted this. I have thought about writing to you since the reunion and always decided against it. Tonight I ran out of excuses." Madison described seeing herself in a photo someone had posted from that night standing behind Harper at the bar. Her expression twisted into something she had not been able to ignore. She wrote about starting therapy later that year, about unpacking why she had spent so much of her adolescence sharpening herself against other girls. She did not try to excuse what she had done. The message did not say, "If I hurt you anywhere." She named specific moments: the locker, the notes, the party she had forgotten to invite Harper to. "I am ashamed of who I was," then she wrote. "That does not undo anything. I know that. I have to live with the fact that I made someone else's life smaller. You did not deserve that. You never did." She mentioned stumbling across a photo of Harper's wedding that Mrs. Lopez had shared online. The one where Harper and Ethan stood under the strings of lights, Maisie a blur of blue in the foreground arm mid-wave. "You looked happy," Madison wrote. "Not polite happy, real happy. Your husband looked at you like you were the only person in the room. Your daughter looked at you like you hung the moon. I do not expect forgiveness. I am trying to be someone my own daughter could be proud of if I have one someday. I just needed to tell you that I see it now. I see what I did. I am sorry." Harper read it twice. Her shoulders tensed, then slowly relaxed. Ethan came out of the kitchen wiping his hands on a towel. He saw her face and stopped. "What is it?" he asked. She turned the laptop slightly so he could read. He leaned over her shoulder, his arm touching hers, eyes moving across the screen. When he finished, he let out a long breath. "That is a lot," he said. "It is," she agreed. "What are you going to do?" he asked. Harper looked past the laptop across the room to the wall. The letter hung there, the word love, near the bottom, catching the light in a way that made the pencil look almost fresh. Years of tension rested in her chest. The weight of it was familiar. It had been part of how she saw herself for so long that imagining the space without it felt strange. She clicked into the reply box. Her fingers hovered over the keys, then began to move. "Hi, Madison. Thank you for your message." She paused, measuring each word not for how it would land with Madison, but for how it felt inside her own skin. "You are right," she wrote. "What happened back then hurt. It stayed with me for a long time in ways I am still untangling. But I am not living in that hallway anymore. I have a family who sees me clearly. I have a life I did not think I was allowed to want." She did not detail it. The cookies, the harbor, the girl asleep down the hall. They were hers. "I accept your apology," she typed. "I forgive you. Not because the past disappears if I do, but because I do not want to keep carrying the anger that came with it. I hope you find what you need to be kinder to yourself and to others. Take care, Harper." She read the message once more, then hit send. The little whoosh sound the app made was soft. The room stayed the same. The framed letter on the wall did not shimmer. The rain outside light and steady again tapped the window in the kitchen. Inside her, something shifted, as if a muscle that had been clenched for years had finally decided to release. Ethan touched her shoulder. "You all right?" he asked. She nodded. "I think so," she said. He slid his hand down to lace their fingers together. They sat there in the quiet glow of the laptop and the lamplight, the words on the wall, and the ones she had just sent out into the world, resting in the same air part of the story that had led them here. 5 years after the morning, she ran after Ethan in the rain. The house hummed with noise. Spaghetti boiled on the stove, steam fogging the lower edge of the kitchen window. Garlic bread warmed in the oven, its smell thick and comforting. A cartoon theme song drifted in from the living room, bumping against the sound of pencils scratching on paper at the table. "Do not use the good markers on the dinosaur," Harper said, one hand on her lower back as she stirred the sauce. "They stain." "They look better," Noah replied. He was 3 perched on a booster seat, tongue caught between his teeth as he colored a brontosaurus. Green bled outside the lines. "Ms. Clark says there are no wrong colors." "Ms. Clark does not have to wash your shirts," Harper said. Noah did not look up. "It is a dragon dinosaur," he explained. "Dragons are green." Maisie rolled her eyes from her spot across the table. At 12, she had perfected the motion. "Dinosaurs are more like birds," she said. "You should make it blue." "You are not the boss of my dinosaur," Noah said. "Actually," she began, then stopped, when Ethan set a bowl of salad on the table between them. "Truce over prehistoric fauna," he said. "Dinner is almost ready." The dining room looked different from the first house they had shared. The table was longer rescued and refinished from a yard sale, wood grain showing beneath a soft sheen. Chairs did not match, but fit together in a way that felt right. Crayon marks dotted the surface near Noah's spot. At one end, a stack of mail and a math worksheet waited for later. On the wall above the sideboard, the framed letter held its familiar place. The pencil was a little more faded now, the paper a little more yellowed, but the words were still clear. October 19th still sat at the bottom like a quiet anchor. Harper turned off the stove and pressed her palm into the small of her back again. The baby shifted a steady, heavy movement low in her belly. She exhaled and rested her other hand over the swell, feeling the push from inside. "You all right?" Ethan asked, moving behind her to twist off the gas. His hand brushed hers on instinct, covering both her fingers and the curve beneath. "Your daughter is practicing her soccer kicks," Harper said. "From the wrong direction." He chuckled. "She gets that from you." "I get tired walking up the stairs," Harper said. "She gets the kicking from you." They had settled on the name weeks ago, sitting on the couch one night, after Maisie had gone to bed, and Noah had finally surrendered to sleep. The conversation had circled the options gently until they both landed in the same place: Olivia. It felt less like replacing and more like weaving a thread back into a pattern. Ethan carried the pot of spaghetti to the table, while Harper brought the sauce in a wide, chipped bowl. Plates clinked, silverware scraped. Noah reached for the grated cheese with both hands and was intercepted by Maisie. "Humans can share, you know," she said. "Dinosaurs cannot," he answered. "Good thing you are not a dinosaur," Ethan said, taking the cheese and serving him a reasonable spoonful. They ate. Maisie talked about rehearsal for the spring play. She had landed a part with more lines than she had expected, one that required standing on stage in front of the entire school. "I thought my legs would turn to jelly," she said, twirling spaghetti, "but they did not. I keep waiting for them to suddenly collapse." "You stood up in front of your class last year and read your story," Harper said. "You did not fall then either." "That was different," Maisie said. "This time there are costumes." "The costumes are what make it less scary," Harper said. "You get to pretend you are not yourself." "I like myself," Maisie said. "Most of the time. That is the weird part." Her cheeks flushed, but she did not look away when she said it. Harper's throat tightened. She reached for her water. "Ms. Ramirez would be proud of you," Ethan said. "She always said you had stage presence." "She also said I talk too much," Maisie replied, in a nice way. "There are worse problems," Harper said. Noah banged his fork on the table. "Tell the story," he said suddenly. "What story?" Ethan asked. "The story," Noah insisted. "The one about the coffee shop and the rain and the letter." He waved his fork in the direction of the framed page on the wall. A speck of sauce flew. Harper handed him a napkin without comment. Maisie sat up straighter. "I can tell it," she said. "I tell it better." "You always tell it," Noah said. "I tell it right," she replied. "Maybe you can tell it together," Harper suggested. Maisie considered, then nodded once. "Fine, I start." She placed her fork down with ceremony. "Once," she said, "my dad was very grumpy in the mornings and only talked coffee." "I talk to people," Ethan protested. "You grunted," Maisie said. "That does not count." Harper covered a smile with her hand. "Every day he went to Lighthouse Coffee, and there was this lady who made his coffee just the way he liked it," Maisie continued. "Black, no room." Noah chimed in on the last words, having heard them enough times to know his cue. One day Maisie said it was raining a lot, and Dad spilled coffee on his shirt and did his forehead thing. Harper glanced at Ethan. He sighed, resigned. He went to leave. Maisie went on, and the coffee lady did something wild. "She ran outside without her coat," Noah said, bouncing slightly in his chair, "and she said, 'Ethan, wait.'" He stretched her name into 2 syllables, mimicking the way he imagined it had sounded. And then Maisie said, lowering her voice a little, she asked him if he would pretend to be her boyfriend for one night, so she would not have to go to her reunion alone. That is weird, Noah said happily. I like that part. Dad said yes, Maisie said, because he is secretly a superhero. I am not a superhero, Ethan said. You are to me, she replied matter of fact. She took a sip of water and kept going. They went to the reunion, and a mean lady tried to be mean again, but Dad said, that is enough, and told her off, and everybody was shocked, especially the mean lady. And then, she glanced at the letter on the wall. And then later she said more quietly, Harper found the letter under my pillow. Noah's face grew serious. He had seen the letter before, traced the lines with chubby fingers, while someone explained that he had been an idea in the future when it was written. I wrote it before I knew her, Maisie said. I wrote it to Mom. I asked for someone who laughed and made good cookies and did not mind that I talked a lot and would stay. She did not stumble over the words anymore. Time had rubbed some of the sharpness off the pain, but not the truth. And she came, Noah said, as if this was the obvious ending. She came, Maisie repeated. Harper swallowed. The baby pressed a heel against her palm, insistent and alive. Ethan leaned back in his chair for a moment, looking at both of them, at the letter at Harper. The glow from the overhead light gilded the edges of everything. After dinner, after dishes, after Noah had finally stopped bargaining for 5 more minutes and gone to bed, the house settled into a quieter rhythm. The cartoon sounds were replaced by the soft murmur of the dishwasher. The rain had stopped, leaving the street outside slick and reflective. Maisie retreated to her room with a script for rehearsal and a promise to turn her light out by 10. Ethan checked on Noah, who slept sprawled diagonally across his mattress, one arm flung above his head, the other clinging to a stuffed triceratops. Harper stood by the living room window, one hand resting on her belly, the other lifting the curtain slightly. The night outside was clear. The sky held a handful of stars faint against the town's glow. Out beyond the roofs and trees, the beam from the real Cedar Harbor lighthouse swept slowly across the water. It appeared bright, then slid away, then returned. Her reflection looked back at her in the glass. The curve of her body, the loose shirt stretched over her stomach, the lines beginning at the corners of her eyes. Behind her reflection, the letter hung on the wall, its white rectangle a small, quiet presence. Ethan joined her, slipping an arm around her shoulders. She leaned into him, fitting herself into the familiar space. Kids down, she asked. For now, he said. Noah was arguing with the dinosaur in his sleep. Seems on brand, she said. They watched the lighthouse blink. Do you ever think about it? She asked after a moment. The version where I deleted that email. Sometimes, he said. Then I stop because I cannot picture it all the way. It feels like trying to imagine this house without walls. She nodded slowly. I used to imagine a lot of versions of my life, she said. Most of them involved me alone in a small apartment, arranging myself around the edges of things, so I would not be in the way. I thought that was the kindest thing I could do for everyone else, to shrink, to stay out of the frame. He turned his head, studying her profile. And now, he asked. She shifted her weight and pressed his hand more firmly against her side. Now, I feel like I am exactly where I am supposed to stand, she said. Even on the days when I still catch myself counting bites, or wondering if the dress is too tight, or if I am taking up too much room on the couch. The thoughts come, but they do not get to be the only voice anymore. He followed her gaze to the glass where their reflections merged, his taller frame framing hers. You have never taken up too much space, he said. Not here. I know, she said. It was not defiance, just quiet agreement. I did not always, but I do now. They fell silent. The house around them held the traces of their life. Crayon on the dining table, a forgotten sneaker near the couch, a stack of building blocks by the hallway. The laughter from earlier in the evening still seemed to linger in the corners. Behind them, the letter caught the light from the lamp. The words that had once lived under a pillow now overlooked board games and spilled juice and late-night conversations. It had become part of the scenery and also something more. Ethan squeezed her shoulder. Do you think she knows? Harper asked. Olivia, do you think she sees all this? He took his time before answering. I think he said that if there is any way for her to see Maisie laughing again, and a little boy who roars at his own drawings, and you standing in this house with her name inside you, she does. And I think she is glad. Harper let out a slow breath she had not realized she was holding. She trusted you with a lot, she said. She trusted me with our girl, he said. Now there is more of us to trust. I am doing my best. She tilted her head back until it rested against his shoulder, eyes still on the lighthouse in the distance. Its beam swept across the water, steady and patient. Inside the glass and the layered reflections, she saw a version of herself she would not have recognized years ago. Tired sometimes, softer in places, standing with a man who had learned to let his smile stay on his face longer, surrounded even when the room was empty by echoes of small voices that had called her name in different pitches all day. The baby shifted again, firm and insistent. Harper pressed her hand there and felt the push. "Welcome to the chaos, kid," she murmured. Ethan's hand covered hers. Outside, the lighthouse blinked. Inside, the framed letter watched over them. The house, full of their things and their people and their prayers answered in unexpected ways, stood solid in the quiet street, the kind of place where someone could take up as much space as they needed and still fit. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.